But we are starting the writing scams panel. This well, panel and or monologue at this point. So if you're in the wrong room, now's your chance to find what you were actually looking for. Just a quick introduction. My name is Josh Vogt. I am a fantasy author and freelance writer. I've been freelancing full-time for just under 5 years now, and I've been working on my author career for over 10 years. I have 2 novels coming out in May. The first is a sword and sorcery action adventure called Forge of Ashes, and that's actually a tie-in novel with the Pathfinder Tales role-playing game. The second one is called Enter the Janitor, which is the first in an urban fantasy series called The Cleaners, about a supernatural sanitation company. So that will also be out in May from a different publisher. I've got a couple dozen short stories published in various markets, across science fiction, fantasy, horror, humor, pulp, lots of different genres, and I also freelance for a variety of role-playing game companies as well. So if any of you are into the gaming side of things, you may have read some of my stuff. So you're all here to learn about writing scams. So I would assume that most of you are writers, or raise your hand if you are writing, want to be a writer. Okay, that's what I figured. Otherwise, you're just here to hear me talk. So why are we even having this talk anyways? And first of all, let me just say, as much as I love the sound of my own voice, since I'm the only one here, we'll just kind of open up questions throughout. We don't need to reserve Q&A until the end. So if I say anything or you have a question pop into your head, just raise your hand and we will address it then. So that way you won't forget by the end if you have something important to talk about. So, okay, why are we talking about scams in the first place? Why are writers being targeted by scammers? What kind of scams are there? You know, what are warning signs of these, and how can you protect yourself from them? And if you've fallen prey to scams, are there ways that you could potentially recover from it? So, scamming in of itself, you're being duped for something, usually something valuable. When it comes to writing, you are being scammed for usually money or the rights to your work. Because those are the 2 most valuable things that you have, your work or the potential earnings off your work, especially if you are trying to make a viable long-term career through your writing. Or even if you have just one piece that you really want to get out there, you have put so much time and effort and energy into that piece that it would be terrible if someone took that away from you or bilked you for tens of thousands of dollars or more, and then that piece never saw the light of day, or never failed to live up to the promises that you received. So that's often what writing scams are aimed for, taking advantage of writers and their creative content for somebody else's profit. Even if you're not paying them directly, if they gain control of the rights to your content, then they're going to be able to use that to profit off that, and you will not have the legal recourse to do so. So that's kind of what, that kind of defines the gist of writing scams these days. Your money and your creative content. Now, the other question is, why do writers fall for scams so often? Why is it such a big issue that we actually have a whole topic about it? Why are there whole legal organizations established around this issue? Well, it's because we're writers. We have invested so much time and energy and passion into our work. We get to that point where we will do anything to get it in print. We will do almost anything. There's that sense of desperation that grows year after year, and I have felt it myself, where you will just, anytime there's that glint of hope that you could get published, that you could be that next bestseller, that you could have that validation of being a published author in some form, that really tugs at you. I mean, I'm sure many of you are thinking of that right now, just kind of feeling that of, yeah, that's your dream. That's what you love to do, and that's what you have given a large portion of your life over to, would be my guess. So if someone comes to you and says, I love your work, I think you have the potential to be the next J.K. Rowling, or Jim Butcher, or whoever your big-time author is, of course your heart's going to leap up at that opportunity and be like, yes, I knew it all along. All those rejection letters were obviously, ignorant, and just were denying my genius. But then there's the catch. So, yeah, we want to publish you, but you need to buy into our $5,000 publishing package in order to do that. Yes, we will help you be published, but before we publish you, we do require that you undergo certain editorial services exclusively through the editor that we send you to, who, by the way, costs a couple $1,000s. You know, we love you. We would love to publish you, but we will do all the mock-ups, and we'll even do the cover art. But if you ever want to see a physical copy of your book on the shelves, you're going to have to buy them all yourself, and then go out and deal with them. There are any manner of publishing scams, as well as agent scams. Those are usually the two main areas: publishers and agents. The other reason why writers fall for scams and often get entangled in them is because once you take that first little bait, once you've even invested maybe $100, $1,000, once you have accepted that validation and said, yes, I'll give you my time, I will sign this contract, they don't want to admit that they're wrong. They don't want to admit that they potentially made a mistake. You don't want to go out and say, yes, I'm going to be published, and then in the back of your mind they're saying, oh no, there's something wrong with this, but I don't want to tell my peers that I'm being bamboozled, to use a particular word. So that can be another way that people get hooked along and strung along because of a pride issue. So what are different types of scams? I've kind of been touching on some of them along the way. But let's look at, for instance, agent scams. So I tend to divide it and recognize that there are some different things that are relevant with traditional publishing compared to self-publishing and indie publishing. There are going to be some different truths that actually, and some different tactics that people use. How many of you are pursuing more traditional publishing? Okay, so you're looking for an agent potentially, you're looking for publishers and editors. How many of you are looking to self-publish or indie pub? Okay, all right, great. So yeah, so there are different things that you might have to look out for, and certain truisms that may be different depending on which side you're on. So if you're traditionally published, it is considered a major step to get a literary agent. You want to get represented because the literary agent has been in that role. Some people assign them the role as the gatekeeper and that sort of thing, but they are often considered to have a greater network and greater industry connections that can get you to the publishers more directly. Many major publishers don't take unsolicited or unagented manuscripts, so unless you have an agent, you can't necessarily get to them. So when you're querying agents, one of the big things that you're going to see as a warning sign that this might be a shady agent, okay, backing up 1 second. There is no certification, there is no test, there is no industry licensing or anything like that that determines whether someone is technically an agent or not. If I wanted, I could put out a shingle tomorrow, or whatever a shingle. I could say tomorrow, I'm a literary agent. Query me. I will represent you, I will take you to publishers, all that kind of stuff, and I would be just as legitimate in saying that, technically speaking, as any other agent out there. So recognize that just because someone calls themselves a literary agent doesn't mean they necessarily have the industry. I have no industry experience in that area. I can't read contracts for you. I can't get you in touch with editors, but I can claim that I can, and I can use the idea of me being an agent to pull you in to a shady deal. So first of all, be wary of that just because someone approaches you or has a website saying that they're an agent doesn't mean that that's absolutely true, or that they have the chops to back it up. One of the big warning signs is if an agent approaches you. First off, if an agent approaches you and you have never queried them, big warning sign. Because most professional agents in and of themselves are busy enough that they're not going to be going out and hunting out unknown authors. If you have queried them and then they respond, that's going to be a little bit safer. But if you all of a sudden receive an email in your inbox from an agent that you have never heard of, never queried, or anything like that, and they're like, for some reason they stumbled across your work and all that, you need to be careful. because they may just be trying to throw lines out into the sea and see who gets hooked. The other big thing is that agents are not paid by the writer directly. One of the truisms of traditional publishing is that money should always flow to the writer. If you are pursuing an agent or you are pursuing a publisher in the hopes of having a career, in the hopes of getting actually legitimately published, you should not be out there paying them to make that happen for you. Traditionally, an agent's cut is about 15% of the deal that they make for you. That is their motivation to work for you. And agents are not your boss. Agents should not be considered your manager or anything like that. They're supposed to work for you as the writer. And their incentive to do so, their incentive to get out there and make the best deal possible, is that 15% cut that they get off the advance, or off, however you negotiate that contract. So if an agent comes to you and says, yes, so if a publisher is asking you to pay them for their, one of the more infamous ones was either Publish America. I don't know if any of you have heard of Publish America. Okay. They became so infamous that they have changed their name and totally rebranded as America Star Books. So if you ever encounter America Star Books, it's the same company, and this is exactly what they do. They have different tiers. They have like their platinum tier and their gold tier and their bronze, silver and bronze, and each of those tiers get you different levels of service and a different number of books and different copy editing and all that kind of stuff. But of course, each costs $1,000, $5,000, $10,000, $25,000. It is insane to think that you would pay that much for that sort of process, but people do it all the time. I have a friend of mine who was approached by a woman who said, he's a professional author, and he was approached by this woman who said, my daughter received an email from this company called Publish America, and they said, we found your work, we really love it, we really think you have lots of potential, and we want to publish you. These are the details on our $10,000 bestseller package, or whatever they were calling it. And she gave my friend her daughter's manuscript and said, would you look at it and see if you feel it is of publishable quality? And he read it. He read the first few chapters, and he told her, this needs a lot of work. Your daughter has potential, but this has a lot of errors, a lot of bigger issues than that. And he didn't understand why this company, he knew who they were, and he warned her off and said, your daughter should not publish through them. And then about a week later on Facebook, he saw this woman being like so happy for her, that she's being published through this company and all this kind of stuff. And it was just this sense of, I'm so sorry. You've made this terrible error, and you're going to hate yourself down the road because you've paid these people to basically do nothing for you that you could not have done yourself for far less money. So Vanity Publishers are an enormous issue, and going back to what I was talking about earlier, some agents will actually work with Vanity Publishers. So they will work on kind of a referral or a commission basis, where if they have an author, they don't necessarily charge the fees up front, but they will say, oh yes, we have a publisher who wants to publish you. It's going to cost $5,000 to get published with this company. And then of course they get a kickback if the author actually buys in. So that's another scam that can be brought around. I'm sure it's becoming pretty clear like how many ways there are that you can get hooked in and sucked into this sort of thing. Excuse me. Publishers will do, again, many of the same things that agents will do. They will do, you buy the basic package, but then there are all sorts of add-ons. The editorial fee, the marketing fee, the cover art fee, the distribution fee, if there's any distribution at all, the printing fee, all those sorts of things. The reason why traditional publishing exists is because publishers handle all those costs for writers in the first place. That's what an advance was for. They would pay the writer a particular amount, Hopefully that, and then they would cover all the actual costs of the editing and the publication and the marketing and the promotion, at which point they would produce the best book that they could and hope that it earned out against the advance. If it did earn out, great. Then the author might actually start making some royalties. That's how the model works. It's not the author investing in the publisher and then getting a bunch of books dumped on them that they then have to go around and try and sell to bookstores that aren't going to take them in the first place. Let's see. Editors. So we talked about agents, we talked about publishers, editors. There are many, so let's talk actually a little bit, we've talked a little about traditional publishing, self-publishing, and indie publishing. What are some of the major differences? Well, first of all, the truism that money flows to the writer isn't true anymore. Because when you are self-publishing or indie publishing, and the difference is, self-publishing is simply putting out a book under your own name. You get it done, you get the cover art, you put it up on Amazon, your name is the publisher. Indie publishing, technically speaking, is when you actually incorporate as a publisher yourself. You have a business name, you have a trademark, you have a business license, and you publish not under your name, but under the publisher name. It's a little bit more official, and a lot of people do that, especially if they're wanting longer series or they're wanting to establish themselves more professionally speaking, because it always looks more professional if you look on the spine of a book and there's a publisher name versus just, Forge of Ashes, written by Josh Vogt, published by Josh Vogt. That in itself might, not that readers necessarily are turned off by that, but if you're going to a bookstore and trying to get it on the shelves, that's going to make a big difference. Tangent. But with self-publishing and indie publishing, the publishing costs that were covered by the publisher, those do end up being covered by you. You have basically eliminated their position and you are assuming the role of the publisher. Therefore, things like the editorial costs, hiring an editor, which I highly recommend anyone who is self or indie pubbing do in all instances, is hire an editor. The finding cover art and paying for whether you get an independent artist or paying for the rights to the images that you use, paying for a layout person, or learning to do the layout yourself. Or maybe you're a graphic artist, so you do the cover art yourself. And eventually doing all the work of getting your book onto the different sales platforms like Amazon or Kobo or, it's the Apple platform for books, the iStore. So basically it boils down to the time or the money. You either take the time to learn all those skills yourself as a self or indie publisher, or you take the money to pay people to do that for you. That is different than traditional publishing, obviously. But that is the one instance in which the money is going out from you because you are investing in your own product. You are removing the publisher, but you cannot remove the time and the money and the resources required to get your book out there in the first place. You're simply deciding to do it on your own. So that's the big thing. So it's not necessarily a bad, yes?
Yeah, I've heard, I don't know if it's true, and maybe it's true for some and not for others, but if you want to win an agent, you need to send them something that's already been edited.
It can certainly help. I do know authors who will hire editors to clean up their manuscript before they query or before they pitch to publishers. And I do know people who will, even if they have an agent, will still hire an independent editor to clean up their manuscript before that goes out to publishers, before the agent starts submitting it elsewhere. There's nothing really wrong with that.
So the agent doesn't necessarily edit the work?
No, I mean, some agents do take on an editorial role. They shouldn't charge you for it. Some agents may recommend other editors, but they should never force you to use them. And you should have the time needed to find, if you want to invest and make sure that your manuscript is as ready to go as possible, then yes, you could find an editor that you believe is worth your time and worth your money, to go under that process, and then hope that brings out a little bit extra quality that will give you a better chance of actually getting that contract. So yes, that's not a bad route to go.
Right.
It just depends on how confident you are in where your manuscript is.
Well, first writer, I'm sure there's a few things in there
Sure.
that could be improved.
Yeah, and a lot of agents do give feedback, and a lot of agents will say, you know, when I did have an agent, I don't currently, but he did. He gave me several pages of notes saying, you know, here's a few things that I think could be better about this and all this kind of stuff. And when he submitted it to some editors and they gave feedback, he sent that to me, and we kept trying to improve the manuscript as we went, but I never got charged for those things. Okay, it keeps coming back to them trying to draw a little bit more and a little bit more out of you. So we've been, any other questions at the moment? We have a separate contract, we can offer this % of royalties or that kind of thing, and there won't be any upfront cost to it you necessarily. But it's the conflict of interest, because if you are, why should they be earning anything off you if they're not actually giving you a book contract? Why at that point, why wouldn't you just go and self-publish or indie publish yourself?
Yeah, unless they have marketing or some other connections,
Perhaps.
I don't know. I think I've heard of that happening, but I don't know if it's
And it is happening, and there are actually, so recognize when I say these things, these are all big, bold examples. There are a lot of blurred lines. There are a lot of legitimate agencies that have EPUB divisions, and it's okay. They do a fine job. It's for me, it's more the conflict of interest that tends to, I want an agent because I want them to be giving me many major book deals and movie deals and all that kind of stuff. That's, for me and my career, that is an agent's role. I don't want them using me as their own sole, you know, they work for me, I don't work for them, is kind of how I look at it. And if I am their author all of a sudden, instead of them being my agent, then that shifts, in my mind, that shifts the control and the power balance. Yes?
How, if an agent then says, okay, we found this publisher, which you don't know is somebody they have a link with, so then would it just shift to your evaluating the contract that the publisher would offer you, or how would you even recognize that something's fishy there?
I mean, it may not be up on the surface, and there may not even be an official deal in place. We've been talking about money being one of the big warning signs. The other big warning sign, and I keep saying warning sign a lot, but that's because what it is pressure. If they're not forcing you to pay, but they're pressuring you to go a particular route that you don't necessarily want to or aren't comfortable with or aren't familiar with, whether that's going with a particular editor, going with a particular publisher, going with a particular critique service or anything like that, you will often start getting a sense of them pushing you that way or feeling like they're limiting your options, you know, cutting you off from the ability to really decide how you want to control your content and your career. So that would be an instance. Like, so if they say this publisher, you say, well, no, actually, I would prefer to go over here. Oh, no, they're not an option at all. We're going to just push them off the table. This is really your only big option. This is your one chance. Then you might be, okay, wait, why are they my only route to take at this point? That might be an indicator in that instance. When they start pushing you and saying, well, the deal is on the table for only a limited time, so you have to do it now, and you have to choose now, and all this kind of stuff. That sense of pressure, trying to force you into a decision without the time to think it through, to do the research, to actually decide that, yes, this is in my best interests. That's a red flag. Yes?
You mentioned editors earlier.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a chance of getting caught up in, are there any editing scams out there?
Yeah.
And what are the warning signs for that? Because one of my friends just hired an editor, and ever since she told me, I've been worried about her.
So, with the advent, with the rise of self and indie publishing, editorial services are a very worthwhile and, in my opinion, essential investment for anyone who is going to ever put a book out there on their own, whether they're incorporated or under their own name. Because it's very hard to be objective about your own work. You can polish it and polish it and polish it and just be, you can critique group it and all that kind of stuff, but editors will have an objective eye. That is their role, to have an objective eye and to find the ways to bring that little bit of extra quality and brilliance and polish out of your manuscript. However, just like with agents, there is no criteria to be an official editor or not. I freelance edit. I have edited manuscripts, and I sometimes call myself an editor alongside my authoring and freelancing and all that kind of stuff. Warning signs would be, again, lack of track record. If they call themselves an editor and they have they can't point to any other client or any book that has come to market after undergoing their editing services, they have no testimonials, and you ask, and especially if you ask them for those, and they say, well, that's confidential, or they say, well, I'm kind of just getting started. I mean, and this is not to knock people who are just getting started with their careers. Everyone has to start somewhere. But if they're trying to establish themselves as a professional, they will start putting out those pieces of evidence that they can do the job. And if they can't, that might be an indicator. Again, professional conduct. Do they have a contract that they can provide that clearly states the definition of the work being done and the timeline and the payout and all that sort of stuff? Contracts keep coming back into it. As well as, there's one other thing, simply asking around. Has this editor worked with anyone that you know? Do they have a reputation in the industry at all? Not just evidence of work that they've done, but what's their reputation? Are they timely? Do they communicate well? Have people been satisfied with the work that they've done? All that sort of stuff can be ways to check into it. Yes?
Is there a pay scale, to follow up on the editing question, is there a pay scale that you're looking at when you're looking at any professional service of that nature? If it seems like you're being undercharged, is that an indicator of a scam?
Contracted editors are going to be able to establish their own rates. It is good to find perhaps half a dozen or even a dozen editors who are all working within, that, and see what they charge, kind of get an idea of what the average cost may be, because there are no industry specific standards. I can charge whatever I want for my editorial services, and it's up to you to decide whether you think it's worth it or not. If you go in and you realize, oh, this editor's really cheap compared to all the others, yeah, that might make you think, okay, why? And if they're a newer editor, that might be just their opportunity to say, I want to get new clients and I want to give you an opportunity to invest in me without paying thousands of dollars or anything like that. So if they're newer and offering lower prices, that might not be a bad thing. If they, there is still that, in any industry, I believe the truism of you pay for what you get. At the same time, you don't want to be, you don't want to throw away your money. You want to find out what's reasonable, what other people find other people who have used editors, ask them what they paid for their services, and just get an idea in your mind of what's an acceptable range. And if they're extremely high, why? Have they been working with, Stephen King's self-published novel or something like that? I mean, do they have some reason why they're doing this? If they're extremely low, why? The more you question, the better your chances of catching something before it catches you. So yeah, it's not necessarily a huge issue. It's just it makes you question, and that's not a bad thing to step back and question. What are ways that you can protect yourself from all this? For me, the number one way is simply research. And that just goes back, question, what's really going on behind the scenes here? Who are these people really? Are they who they say they are? Can they really do what they say they do? Is it worth my investment? And what have other people's experiences been working with this agent, this editor, this publisher, or anything like that? There are a lot of resources out there to research this sort of thing, aside from Google. I mean, Google is your friend, okay? If someone comes to you and you Google their name and they don't have a single search result to that, then okay, that's probably a bad sign. I have up here, so the name of this panel is called Writer Beware, Writing Scams. Writer Beware actually talks to the SFWA organization. SFWA is the Science Fiction and Fantasy Writers of America. They're an official professional quality organization. They actually just recently changed their membership standards so that self-published and indie published authors can also become members. I'm a member. I believe it's been very worth my while. You'll hear arguments from either side, but they have a free resource, an organization called Writer Beware, that tracks a lot of this information. They track shady agents and editors. They track lawsuits that are ongoing. They do constant blog posts and essays and articles that can teach you far more in depth than what you'll get in this hour. This is just kind of skimming a lot of the surface stuff about scams and writers that have fallen for these things and the latest things that are popping up with new technologies and new contests because contests are a whole other area of scams that we'll touch on if we have time. But I highly recommend Writer Beware as a resource. If you Google an agent and they're on the first page you see a Writer Beware link with their name on it, that's a very bad sign because that means that they've been heavily investigated and they have like a top 10 or top 20 list of agents and editors and publishers who are kind of blacklisted, basically, that you should never ever work with, including Publish America or America's Star House. There is another one that I use a lot is a forum called Absolute Right Water Cooler. Absolute Right Water Cooler, they have a sub-forum called Bewares and Background Checks. It's not moderated by anyone specifically, but you can go in there and search for an agent, an agency, a publisher, or anything like that, and you 99% of the time you will come up with a thread of conversation about them. Who is this person? I just got contacted by them. I got a query back from them. I got a contract from them. Has anyone had experience with them? What are they like? Was it good? Was it bad? All this sorts of stuff. They will have a wealth of information, and if they don't, then you can ask them. Post a new topic and say, I just got something here. And it's a very invaluable forum in and of itself, but their Bewares and Background Checks section has helped me a lot steer clear of potential troublesome waters. Another one that you could use is called Predators and Editors. Yes. And this is an independently run site that keeps a database of publishers and agents. I'm not sure if they've added. I do think they have some contractual editors now listed, but they keep a database of well-behaving, poorly behaving, dubious, and very misbehaving individuals across the realm. They will say, this agent is known for charging reading fees, steer clear. This agent has gotten many good deals and has a great rep, go for it. So these are the kind of resources that you need to start using ahead of time. If an agent contacts you or responds positively to a query, jump on all these resources and research them exhaustively until you are absolutely assured that they are who they say they are and that they can do what they say they can do. If you have friends or associates, if you're coming to conventions or you go to writing conferences like that, ask people at them. Because if someone has a bad reputation, while it's a national-wide industry, a lot of people talk amongst themselves, and everybody knows Publish America within a certain degree, or America's Star House. Everybody has heard of different editors and publishers and all that they know are bad apples. And if you bring up their name, they'll be like, oh no, you should never ever deal with that person, and here's why. So use the resources you have at hand to agents in which editors are constantly doing new deals, which ones have a track record. Some of that stuff you have to have a membership to see, but some of it you can look up and see if they're registered. Googling and research, and the Absolute Right Bewares and Background Checks forum will highlight a lot of the legitimate ones or the ones that you'll have good experience with. So a lot of the same resources will show you both the good and the bad. Yeah, it can be back and forth. Yes?
Where could someone go? I write, I also have edited. Where can I go to find advice to become a better editor, to get more into the market, into the business of that? Is that a predator and editor thing where I can find links to go? in that direction?
I think editors would. I believe there are, I don't have a list here, but I believe there are organizations that do, like, there are national editorial organizations that you can sign up and be part of. I would say contact some other editors, independent editors, and say, what have you done? Where have you gone? Have you gone to retreats? Have you gone to conferences?
Just Google, excuse me for sitting here listening to a writing thing, 'cause
No,
I
no,
write,
no.
but I thought, well, wait a minute. If people need editors, I can do that too, but I
Mhm.
want to make sure I got into the right,
Yeah.
on the right track.
Find other editors that you think are professional. Find ones with really good track records. See what they're doing. See what they're charging. See how they present themselves. Email them and just ask for advice. And many times you will get a friendly reply. You know, I've done that before. Yeah, and finding those resources should be fairly easy, I would say.
I just thought of somebody I know who's a writer. I can ask her about her editor. Okay,
There you go.
thank
Yeah,
thank
find
you.
other writers who have used editorial services and ask them for recommendations. I have a few of these writer beware brochures. If anyone wants to take them with them, please take them with you. And I guess if there are no other questions, yeah.
Would you recommend like taking classes to be an agent and representing yourself?
To represent yourself?
Yeah, could you do that?
That would be interesting. I can't think of any specific classes on just agenting in and of itself. I'm sure there are.
It's more something that you fall into if you've been in the industry a long time.
It can be. Some people will intern at agencies. That might be an option if you are with a local. There are the Nelson Agency, I know, is a local agency, so you can intern with them. I mean, a lot of what agents do is act as a writing lawyer. So starting to find examples of as many contracts as you can. Start studying the law side of it. And there are a lot of resources out there. And Google, again, your friend on that. Contact agents and say, if I want to be an agent, what do I do? Or if I want to, understand the work that you do, how do you do it? Where did you start? And many of them started as interns, as junior agents, or they were editors who shifted into agenting. Or publishing is a very fluid industry. Yeah, people go back and forth all the time. So.
Get bored of one thing, do something else.
Kinda. Well, yeah, editors become authors, and all that kind of stuff. So. Any questions? Well, thank you all for coming. I really hope this was helpful.